Hello, my name is Karen Millick, and I'm the Director of Education in the Department of Archaeology. I have a short presentation for you today, which will introduce you to the subject of archaeology and to our modules. And the aim of the presentation is to give you an overview of what we can offer and how it might provide some really interesting complement to other subjects that you are taking for your degree. So what is archaeology? I think many of us are introduced to archaeology by Indiana Jones, and I know I certainly was, but he was a terrible archaeologist. And so just to start from scratch, archaeology is the study of the human past that uses objects and monuments and landscapes that have been changed by people and that people have been left behind for us to study. And this can mean that we're looking at a whole range of different materials. We're excavating sites, settlement sites and burials. We're extracting material, culture remains, environmental remains, such as bones and teeth, plant remains, and soils and sediments. And we also look at landscapes at that scale and at monuments that have been placed in that landscape and in a particular landscape context. So we're often having to try to reconstruct past environments of these ancient monuments and sites as well. And why is it important? Well, it gives a voice to everyone who lived in the past, not just the powerful and literate. And that's because we don't just go after treasure, and because we look at material remains alongside any available historical documentary sources. And the material remains are very often very humble and represent a cross-section of society, women, children, the poor, as well as the rich. Just to give you an example, in the lower pictures on the slide, you can see modern and ancient rubbish tips. So these are contexts in which archaeologists are excavating to look at the material remains left behind by everyone in society, not just the wealthy, which you could find in a tomb, for example, of somebody who was very rich and important. And these physical remains of everyday rubbish sometimes tell a completely different story than the narrative that's presented to us in historical texts or monuments. And that's because these texts or monuments were purposefully constructed to convey a message. And sometimes the message is not necessarily entirely truthful or representative of all of society. So, for example, a really interesting study was done some years ago in America that looked at modern rubbish in contemporary societies. And people were surveyed, asked what they consumed, and then that was compared to what showed up in their rubbish. And as you can imagine, what they claimed to do and claimed to consume was quite different from what was found, the evidence that was found. Just to illustrate that material culture can provide complementary stories, sometimes backing up historical narratives and sometimes contradicting them. And it's important to have that information, I think, as well as the historical sources. Material culture and environmental remains, such as bones and plant remains and sediments and human bones, can give us insights into bigger historical or political events as well. Just as an example, we can use very kind of humble objects such as spindle whorls. That's what you can see in the top left here. Just to see, and this image shows how a drop spindle is weighted with a whorl at the end. And this was a technique used from the Bronze Age right the way through till the 19th century to spin yarn from wool. And this lower image is of loom weight. So the weight's actually used in an upright loom. And we can use something simple like this material culture of textile production to look at how normal people, particularly women, were interacting during a period of migration And in this case, the study that I did with one of my undergraduate students a few years ago was looking at the Scandinavian migration to Scotland. And what we saw was that there was a proliferation of these implements of textile production, lots of varieties for a couple of hundred years when the Scandinavians were first migrating to Scotland. And then after a while, a new kind of hybrid identity and including hybrid fashion and textile types were stabilized, and then the material culture was less varied again, especially as the material, these cloths were produced to a standard so that they could be traded. So there was a lot less variety again. Just to give you an example of how material culture can give insights into bigger historical events like that. We also are looking at sustainable development goals, and a lot of our research maps on very well with the UN's sustainable development goals. And this includes, for example, looking at past and present environmental changes and the impacts that these have on human societies, long-term data that allows us to look at how societies have reacted to, been resilient to, or failed as a result of changes, political changes, environmental changes, these kinds of pressures on a society. And we can look at the degree to which societies in the past adapted, how they adapted, and what tipping points caused them to crash sometimes. And this gives us really important insights into modern societies and the degrees to which we are vulnerable and the degrees to which we may be resilient as well. We also are using especially human remains from excavated sites, looking at diet and health and well-being and how this maps on to social inequality in the past. So just for example, Professor Becky Gowland in our department has been looking at the health and well-being of children during the Industrial Revolution from the material remains that have been excavated. Really important insights into how those youngsters were affected by factory work during the 18th and 19th centuries. We can also look at energy sources, sustainable and very unsustainable uses of different fuels, for example, agricultural practices, forestry, soil management, and really looking at human impacts on terrestrial and marine ecosystems more generally. So a whole suite of really important ways in which archaeology is looking at sustainable development. We also are looking at sustainable cities and communities in the past, looking at trajectories over thousands of years amidst major environmental and political changes, looking at water, food, trade, and infrastructure management in the past and right through to the present day. Also looking at the understanding of ecosystem engineering, biogeography, species dispersal, biodiversity in the past, and up to the very recent present, and also making really important contributions to the understanding of modern conflicts, genocide, heritage, crime, for example, and making important policy statements about those issues, which are being fed into governments, think tanks, inquiries, and so on. So really important ways in which archaeology is contributing to modern societal challenges. So archaeology combines really well with a whole suite of subjects, history, for example, politics, classics and ancient history, anthropology, geography, visual arts, and cultural studies. All are considered to be sister subjects with archaeology, and you would find that archaeology would complement these subjects really well. Now, at level 1, we offer these modules: Archaeology in Britain, a module called Medieval to Modern, one on an introduction to world prehistory, Discovering World Prehistory, Cities in Antiquity, which focuses on the cities of ancient Greece and Rome, Ancient Civilizations in the East, and more of a methodologically focused module, Applied Archaeological Methods, which is paired with a couple of other modules, such as Historical and Archaeological Methods and Sources. So that, for example, they start together, Applied Archaeological Methods and this Historical and Archaeological Methods and Sources, they start together in term 1, and then they split in term 2, where the latter focuses more on historical sources as well, such as historical maps and documents. So, I have set out a few possible connections and good pairings, complementary subjects. But I think that what I would recommend is that you have a look at the module descriptions for all of these modules to see which ones actually pair best with your own personal interests and with the other subjects that you're taking. The other thing to bear in mind is that some level 2 subjects do have prerequisites at level 1. So for example, if you're interested in any of these level 2 modules, you may want to have a look at getting 20 or 40 credits in archaeology at level 1 to make sure you're allowed to take these. So at level 2, we have another more in-depth module focused on medieval and post-medieval Britain in its European context. One module on debating archaeology in a historic world. This one complements very well with history, for example, and prehistoric Europe, from foragers to state formation, becoming Roman, looking at the Iron Age right up to the Roman Empire, both in Italy and in the Western Roman Empire, the Eastern Mediterranean world in the Bronze Age, ancient Mediterranean civilizations, East and West, a module called Debating Anthropology and Archaeology, which is a core module for students doing the joint degree in archaeology and anthropology, and which would naturally be of great interest, we think, to students who are pairing archaeology and anthropology in the combined honors and social sciences as well, for example. There's then an umbrella module called Advanced Skills, which offers a large range of options. And those options range from looking at material culture to something like geographical information systems, building recording. There's one on contemporary archaeological methods. So looking at the modern day, material culture in the modern day. Sensory methods, looking at human osteoarchaeology, visual methods in archaeology, heritage practice. So students take either 2 advanced skills or 4, depending on the number of credits that they want, 20 or 40 credits that they want in those practical skills. We also have scientific methods in archaeology 2, which builds on a scientific methods in archaeology 1 module at level 1. But you can also take this if you've taken advanced archaeological methods, for example. And this one gives more in-depth knowledge and background in the different scientific applications in archaeology. We also have a professional training course at level 2, which includes a summer field course and a 3-week excavation, in case that is of interest to anybody to really get more insights into how archaeological information is extracted out of the ground and subsequently analyzed. Now at level 3, these are the modules that are available: interpreting heritage, museum representation, current archaeology, archaeology and global sustainable development, which focuses on those sustainable development goals of the UN and how they map onto archaeology. Specialized aspects of archaeology is another umbrella module with many options available. These options are period-based, some of them are regional-based, some of them are methods-based. And but all of these themes and topics are very current, very much focused on the current research of members of staff in the archaeology department. And they include things that map really well with some subjects like history, politics, and anthropology and geography, for example. So topics looking at slavery and forced labor, migration and movement, forensic archaeology and anthropology, different modules related to aspects of art and identity, cultural identity, science communication in the media, and so on. These are just a few examples. There's actually a wide range of choices. And what you would need to do if you're interested in taking some of those is make sure that you alert our undergraduate secretary or talk to either the Director of Education in Archaeology or the Director of Undergraduate Studies, and make sure you get that list of that's updated every year of those the different specialized aspects options so that you can see what's on offer from year to year. And these are usually advertised in the spring, the year before level 3. We then have a Scientific Methods in Archaeology 3, which builds on Scientific Methods in Archaeology 2, more in depth into different scientific applications in archaeology. And we have a level 3 Advanced Professional Training module as well, which is building on a summer placement. So if you're interested in doing that module, you will have needed to do a summer placement. And again, you'd need to get information from our undergraduate secretary about the placements that are available for you. So I hope that is a useful introduction to archaeology as a subject and the different modules we have available. And I would just encourage any of you to look at all of those module descriptions that are online and to see what maps on best with your program. And if you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to contact myself or my colleague, Dr. Marta Diaz-Guardamino, who is the Director of Undergraduate Studies. We're really happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.